Good morning, everybody. It's 8 o'clock on Tuesday, which means that we are live here on LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube. Welcome, welcome. If you're watching the replay, definitely stay tuned because we have a fantastic guest today and we're going to learn really actionable things that we're going to do now live here, and then you'll be able to take this forward in your business because our special guest today is Marth Gleason of Marth Gleason Voice, and she is fantastic at helping people find the power in their voices, particularly for executives, for this new virtual world that we're in. And of course, the body and the voice go together. So she and I have been fast friends ever since we met in I think it was a speaker training course a few months back, maybe even a year now or more. I think it was right at the beginning of COVID, I think, when everything shut down, I think is when we met. So to introduce Martha, just know that she is dedicated to working with corporate teams to ignite their speaking impact. And if you want a phenomenal speaker, you should connect with Martha because she has her signature talk, Ignite Your Impact, which is fantastic and is well sought after. If you want to contact her anytime, and I will be putting this in the comments for you as well, the easiest way to remember how to get in touch with her is just callwithmartha.com. So it's a very easy way to remember when you decide by the end of this, oh my gosh, I need to work with this woman. How do I do that? So without further ado, I am going to add Martha to our broadcast. And so welcome today. Thanks so much for being here on this glorious morning. Please go ahead and add anything that you want to that bio. I didn't want to get too corporate sounding like I'm just reading something from you, but is there anything else that we should fill in the gaps?
Well, I just want to first say, Allison, thank you so much for having me here. It is fantastic to be coming in live. I've enjoyed our collaboration so far so very much. Yes, the voice and the body language absolutely are in perfect synergy. And it's such an important topic right now because what I'm finding, and I'm sure you're seeing this with your clients as well, is that we need to even be better on video right now with our voice and with our body language. There's no better time right now than to really elevate these skills. And so I know you're seeing this. I'm certainly seeing this in my work, and I'm very honored to be here and share these actionable tools that our listeners can use right away to amplify their voices.
Perfect. Which brings me right into probably our first little exercise, because I think one thing that people perhaps haven't necessarily even thought about is the voice through this virtual video medium, because we have talked so much about lighting and background and setting your camera up and looking into the camera and all of these things. But I don't hear a whole lot of people talking about that voice connection. And we really can improve the way that we're using our voice through the computer as well. So what can people do for their virtual voices?
I'm so glad you're bringing this up, because really the voice is our calling card, and how you use your voice and the words you choose, of course, but the tone you're using, the rate, the pitch, all of those things that come in with speaking directly impact whether your listeners are going to hear you and take in your message or whether they're going to tune you out. So one of the very first things we want to talk about in improving the sound of our voice and being heard is optimal performance posture. I'm going to stand up so I can give a tool around this right away. And some of our listeners, if you're in a place where you can stand up, I invite you to do that. Otherwise, you can certainly stay seated. I just lift my monitor up. I have a movable monitor. So that's just a tip if you do need to be standing. So when we talk about optimal performance posture, friends, the very first thing we need to think about is, where are our feet? Now, obviously, if you're sitting, you just want to keep your feet together. I would avoid crossing your legs because that changes the whole angle of the spine. If you are standing, think about putting your ankle bones directly under your hip bones. So by that, I don't mean the outside of the pelvic girdle here, but I really mean where the hips come into the sockets. So your feet are about 2 fist widths apart. So not terribly far apart. Then you want to bring your weight onto the balls of your feet and your heels are lightly touching. So it's 75% of the weight is on the balls of the feet and the heels are still absolutely there, about 25%. Check in with your knees. Make sure you can just give them a little jiggle. Make sure that they're not locked, because if you're locking your knees and you're standing and presenting, you can really be set up for a vasovagal reaction and you can actually faint. So make sure your knees are not locked. Then you want to check in with your shoulders, and this will apply if you're seated as well. Check in to make sure your shoulders are over your hips. We really don't want to throw our shoulders back, sort of military style here with the chest up. We really want them more anchored a la Pilates right over your hips. And the rib cage is down and flat. Also make sure you're not rolling your shoulders forward, that you're slouching. What that can do is it will pop your chin forward. That changes the whole position of your voice box and is not great. So again, shoulders right over the hips. Then I'm going to invite you to take your hands and put them behind your head. And Allison's doing such a great job demonstrating this with me here. Just push your head directly back into your hands. That looks great. Make sure you don't elevate the chin. A lot of people will do that when they push their head back. You want the chin parallel to the ground. You'll feel the back of your neck muscles turn on a little bit. Those are your neck stabilizers. Notice how your ears are back over your shoulders. Leave your head in that position and let's bring our hands down by the sides. This is what I call head and neck anchoring. This puts the voice box in the most stable position for speaking. If your chin is up, it can pull the larynx or the voice box right up with it, and that cuts off the sound. So again, chin parallel to the floor, head pushed back. And then lastly, you can just stand really tall or sit really tall through the top of your head. And you can see what a commanding presence this creates. So I'm going to demonstrate this, friends. So if I'm slouching, I'm back on my heels, my shoulders are rolled forward, my head comes forward. This does not look as good as this. And this is where, Allison's, I'm sure, works a lot with this as well. But this also creates a more stable position for the voice. So now we'll all sit back down, those of us that are standing.
So for those of you that feel like, or that don't have the standing desk or don't normally do your meetings with standing up, you might want to consider it, because we're going to continue to do virtual, and having the option to stand always gives you more presence. But the posture that Martha was just demonstrating is the same type of posture that I'm always talking about when it comes to that executive presence, because it is opening you up. I always say that you're opening up to receive. And you can respond then with better body language. The minute you're slouching down or whatever, like your body just doesn't, like your gestures just don't look as powerful. You don't tend to gesture as much because you're, it's very much, I always equate it to like the soccer goalie that's ready for the ball. They have to be open and ready, and they're on the balls of their feet, ready to go anywhere to try to grab that ball. Or football players, baseball players, any kind of sports analogy, you're ready to go. And that's what you really need for the body language piece. And then also real love, particularly the keeping the chin down, which is also why you need to make sure that you're looking at where your camera is, because there's a lot of people that I see, and I'm sure, Martha, you've seen this too. They have their cameras up and off, or maybe they are using a 2-monitor system. I see this a lot now, that people have gone to an extra monitor. And so their camera is over here, and maybe they're typing something and they're looking at this one, and then they come over here to look at whoever it is that they're talking to. And then immediately they're raising their chin up because the camera that they're looking into is above them. So really look at where your camera is so that you can keep this alignment and make sure that everything is optimal. That's really what we're talking about. We're talking about creating an optimal environment for your body and voice to work together as powerfully as they can. And for virtual, that's so important. One of the things that people had been asking me, and it's kind of funny, it's kind of come back. I don't know whether you're noticing this, but right away at the very beginning of the pandemic, April, May, June, when my TED Talk came out on virtual communication, everybody was clamoring to help their teams. And then it sort of waned a little bit, like, oh, maybe this won't last very long, or I guess what we're doing is okay. Right. And now I'm starting to get calls again because people are realizing that this isn't going away and maybe we really should be looking at it, or they're noticing that their sales hadn't been quite as good maybe as they expected it to be, and they're thinking, maybe we need to up our game when it comes to virtual. So what do you see that people need help with when it comes to virtual that maybe they hadn't even thought about?
That's a fantastic question. I mean, there's so many areas. And in fact, I'm working with the sales team right now because exactly what you said, I'm so glad you brought that up, Allison, that those sales are not where they want them to be. One thing I see is that clients, and this is the trend for 2021, based on some market research, the trend for client connection right now is that people, because of what we've been through with the pandemic, clients, customers, colleagues, they are craving a deep personal connection. And the way to do that is to show up on video. So you can get a lot more out of, say, sending a video email, which I'm working with right now with the sales team, learning how to send video emails. That creates the client trust and connection because they can see your eyes and they can hear your voice. And so this is a way for us to show up for our clients that's much more powerful than just a texting message. So really upping your video email game is a great skill set to have. And that would come back to a lot of the things that Allison teaches with what she was just talking about, fantastic posture, and then how to find your video voice. One thing I think is very important, and the tool that I'd like to give you that you can start using right away, is the power of articulation. In America, especially, we are very lazy articulators. We will say, what's up? And we mumble a lot. We sort of talk like this, and we talk really fast, and we just sort of let the words flow off. Blah, 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 blah. And that does not create personal trust and connection. If you really want to connect deeply with your audience, you need to make sure they hear what you're saying. And so you've got to use strong articulation. So this is a favorite tool, and it's very simple. But first I'm going to ask, and I know Allison knows the answer to this question, how do we articulate? How do we pronounce the words?
And this is funny. This is a question that stumps people all the time because they don't realize that we would only be speaking in vowels if we didn't have the ability to use our lips, our teeth, and the tip of the tongue. Those are the articulators that make consonants. And it's consonants that makes one word different from a different word. And in English, as you say, we are very lazy speakers. And I'm always telling people too, the English language, the important words, the qualifiers are at the end of the sentence. So I'm sure you do a lot of this too, with keeping the energy and the breath to the end.
Yes.
That we tend to drop off, or I find personally, if I feel all of a sudden I get that feeling that I've been speaking too long or too much, and then I just let it go because I'm like, nobody cares. Nobody's listening to me. And so you tend to, I've been fighting that for years, just kind of letting myself trail off and fighting that urge when you feel like you're losing your audience, which is another whole thing that we may or may not talk about. So what's the articulation we should be doing to warm up our voices?
So one of my favorites, there are many we could do, but one of my favorites is to simply say the tip of the tongue and the teeth and the lips. And you want to exaggerate the lip positions. Oftentimes, if you can feel as if someone is reading your lips, that's really helpful. This is going to feel awkward. It's going to feel like you're moving your mouth more than you're used to doing. So let's just practice that together. The tip of the tongue and the lips. And really hit lips. Yes, the tip of the tongue and the teeth and the lips. And the tip of the tongue and the teeth and the lips. And the tip of the tongue and the teeth and the lips. And the tip of the tongue and the teeth and the lips. So you can just speed that up as you get more facile with it. And you can just do that walking around the house. Because again, we are not used to, as Americans particularly, we're not used to moving our mouths, nor do the Brits so much. The Italians, who are master singers and masters at expressing themselves, they move their mouths like crazy.
And I will tell people to chew, or at least with the little kids, when I used to teach drama class to my little kids, and we would do warm-ups they would bring in tongue twisters and they would share tongue twisters and we would do all of those sorts of things. And I would always tell them to chew their words. That was my clue to them. If I could hear them, but I couldn't understand them. That's the big difference, right? You may feel, and that may be happening to some of the people that are listening today, is you feel like there are some people on your team that it's like, I hear them, but why can't I understand them? Because they're not using their articulators. And once you put those masks on, when you get back to the office, that's going to double and triple the importance of your projection, the volume that you're using, and those articulators, because this is going to be the new normal when we get back to the office and we're in enclosed spaces. If the CDC says you don't have to wear a mask outside today, if you're vaccinated, that's fine. But most of our offices tend to be inside. So unless you're moving all of your meetings onto the veranda, you're going to need to use those articulators even more when you're in group settings back in the office, because I think that's going to be a whole, that's a whole new thing, which was supposed to be our next topic. Wow, I did that pretty well, and I wasn't even planning. Because we were going to talk about reentry, what I've been calling reentry to the office. I just love that image of, we always get really excited and we have parties, and we've been watching lately these different space shuttle launches with SpaceX and things, and but nobody really talks as much about reentry, or we don't seem to get excited when the ship comes back, right? We talk about it and we're like, oh, the astronauts landed safely. But that's huge. I'm going to unplug my external mic here for a second.
Can't hear you. Lost your sound. Your mic is showing as being off, Allison, in the window. Your other mic was fine.
Plugged it, muted me. I was using my Yeti, but I was getting a feedback on myself. I don't know whether other people could hear it or not. But the idea of reentry, everything turns hot and everything's shaking, and it's like kind of this scary thing. I feel like there's a bit of anxiety and apprehension with turning to the office that we are getting ready for. And on Thursday, if anybody wants the link to a webinar that I'm doing at noon Central, talking with people about reentry, and just, I plan on it being more of a discussion than necessarily a webinar per se. What do people want to know about coming back to the office? What are they nervous about? What can we do as body and voice folks to help them? So that's Thursday at noon. Message me in here and I'll put the link in. So what is a good tip for reentry when it comes to voice? I mean, one thing you probably that we haven't talked about is just doing those exercises, as you say, walking around the house. As you're getting ready in the morning, we don't tend to speak, and we get to the office and we haven't really spoken to anybody because we got in the car. And if you don't have to yell at your kids to get up, or if you haven't been speaking, our voices aren't warmed up to have that first meeting of the day. So if you go in and you have an 8 a.m. meeting or something, do the lips, teeth, tip of the tongue, exercise before you go into that meeting so that your articulators are awake, because otherwise halfway through the meeting, suddenly you start to sound good. But so what else for reentry?
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, Allison. I'm glad you're bringing this up, because reentry is going to bring about a whole set of other challenges that we haven't been facing while we're working from home. The very first thing that comes to mind for me, and I think this also applies when we're on camera, is centering tools. It is very important for us to be centered in ourselves. In fact, I often say it is the most important thing in finding your voice and in presenting with power and igniting your impact. You have to first be centered within your own self. People have been traumatized. There is no doubt about it. They have been overworked. Many people have relocated or lost jobs. They've had massive upheaval. The world has had massive upheaval. So one of the things that I'm going to share right now, you can start using this right away, is one of my favorite centering tools. And I call this double breathing with tension. The other thing is, not only does this tool help you center because it activates the mind-body connection, but it helps your voice because it will relax the false vocal folds, which surround the true vocal folds. So you're centering and relaxing the voice. So this is double breathing. We're going to practice just the breathing first. It's a short, long breath through the nose. It goes like this. And then it's a short, long breath, exhale through the mouth. So let's practice that together. We're going to breathe in through the nose. Exhale through the mouth. And again, friends, I'm breathing twice through the nose, twice through the mouth. Nice. Okay, now we're going to tense the whole body in a wave, and we're going to vibrate a little bit with that tension. Then we're going to throw the breath out and relax and feel. Here we go. Tense the body, vibrate a little bit, and now throw the breath out. Relax and feel. Just notice what you feel. Let's practice it again. Throw the breath out. That looks great. Okay, we're going to do it one more time. I like to do this in rounds of 3s. Here we go. Throw the breath out. And just notice what you feel. You might feel more open in the throat. You might feel more calm and centered because the breath directly impacts our emotional state. You might notice, if you're feeling anxious, that the breath is coming a little quicker. So the opposite, the beautiful thing is that the opposite is true. If you take control of the breath, you can control and calm down your own emotional state. You can reboot your own central nervous system.
One of the things that one of my other early guests that I had on, Kristen Lamar, who does, she's an intuitive success advisor. And one of the things that she does with teams is center the room before the meeting. Same way, taking breaths together. So this would be a great thing to add to that. So get the entire team used to taking this collective breath. You can do it yourself before you enter the meeting, or particularly like right when you're in the threshold, moving from one space to another. Just take a second and out to center yourself. But I would also suggest that you take the risk with your teams to do it in unison, to do it together, because you will actually connect your energies in a different way when you do that. Even virtually, you can still feel that. I know at the very beginning, everybody was telling me you can't feel energy or sense energy through the screen. And I really have to say that I don't think that's true. I think you just have to up your energy a little bit so other people can feel it. That was the problem. Everybody was coming to the meeting with the same energy or lower because of their anxiety and the stress and all of those things. So as soon as you release that stress with this breath exercise, and I don't know whether you guys felt it, but after you do that 3 times, you feel you take in more oxygen. You've just been taking in more oxygen, so you feel more energy. And then you're going to be more alive on screen. And all of these things are going to domino in a beautiful way. You're going to blossom in your virtual presence rather than be a wallflower. And if you want to be seen by your bosses and things, that's the way to do it. Turn your camera on, be present, have great vocal power while you're virtual, and they will take notice. And suddenly you'll be having the promotion that you didn't realize you were up for because your game was at a different level than the other folks on your team.
That is really, really important to talk about. And I'm so glad you said that, Allison, because it is our level of energy. I will also say our own level of consciousness. Are we falling down into fear? Are we falling down into worry, anxiety, overwhelm? Or are we centered and calm? Is our consciousness elevated? Is our energy elevated? That shows up on camera and it shows up in person. And it is the way to be considered for the next career advancement opportunity.
Yep.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people that I feel like are being held back from their goals because they don't seem executive to the other executive levels. They're smart enough, they have the experience, but they just don't come across as executive. And so they're being passed over. And if you feel like that is something that's happening to you, then talk to the next review that you have, talk to your supervisor about receiving some coaching from people like myself and Martha to get you to that level, or do it. There are so many people that I'm like, you know what, just take that investment in yourself and then you'll get that next, it will come back to you because you will get that promotion and it'll pay for itself basically. There are certainly ways to handle that. So do you work with people one-on-one as well? Like if they were curious and they're out there and they're an entrepreneur, or they're like, my company will never pay for it, but I want to buy this for myself. What do? They just connect at callmartha.com and
callwithmartha.com, right?
Yeah.
Callwithmartha.com. Absolutely. I do work with individuals. It's a great joy because that is, we can do this work for teams, and I certainly do, but I love connecting one-on-one with people and helping them, as Allison says so beautifully, to really up-level your image and your visibility to show up in your authentic self. That's what we're really talking about. And I think a lot of us, particularly women, I'll say, have a hard time bringing their full confidence to the table. They are as smart, they are as skilled, they are as capable, but we oftentimes fall into those more supportive roles and we're just a little bit afraid to shine. And we do need coaching. Allison's had coaching. We've been in a coaching platform together. I've had a lifetime of coaching as a professionally trained performer. You have to be coached to really know how to show up in your power.
Right? You just don't hear yourself the same. I mean, physically, literally, you don't hear yourself the same as others do, which is why you hate to record yourself and then listen to it. So many people, same thing, where you don't know what you do subconsciously, physically, because it's subconscious and you don't realize some of the little things that you do until somebody can observe you and tell you what it is that you're doing and help you to either correct, or most of the time it's enhancing. I'm sure you find that the same thing, where a lot of people come to you and say, well, can you fix this? And I'm like, let's not talk about fixing it. Let's talk about enhancing what it is that you're doing.
Yeah, because we want to build on what our clients are already doing well.
Right.
And that's why it's so important to come from the place of your own authenticity. What are your strengths? What are your voice strengths? I have a whole system of voice strengths that I work with people so that they can show up speaking the way that they naturally can do with power, not trying to sound like someone else.
And it's not just for the public speakers or the presenters and things.
No.
It's not, it really is for everyone, because I think that's another place where people get into like false mindsets about what it is that we do, is they think, well, it's really for the presenters, or when I get asked to speak somewhere, then it's too late. Because you already have so many things to worry about, and you're trying to remember your speech, or you're worried about the tech because you added slides to the presentation, or they asked for them, they require you to have a deck. And so now you're worried about the technology things that are going on, and whether the mic, and can you walk in your shoes? I mean, there are just so many other things going on that if you try to have a session right before kind of thing, just to fix a few, tweak a few things, that's really kind of too late. So I encourage everybody to connect with Martha ahead of time, like right now, for instance, particularly if you haven't gone back to the office yet. I think this is the absolute golden opportunity time right now, because businesses are trying to figure out when that going back to the office is going to happen. And I hear more and more about sort of a summertime launch, by August or by September, we plan to have the majority of the office back. So this is a great time to be working on your presence and on your vocal power, because you can practice it through the screen, where maybe you don't feel quite as intimidated or nervous or things as presenting in front of real live human beings. And then when you go back to the office and people are like, wow, like, it's going to be one of those things where they can't quite put their finger on it. They're going to think you've lost weight, or they're going to think you have a new wardrobe. Right?
I love that.
Something's like, you are
different about her.
Really stepped up. What's different about you? You can kind of have this little secret that you've improved your vocal power, and you will be really surprised at how people react to you differently, what they remember, how they engage with you. They will probably speak up. They might actually respond if you ask a question. I have so many executives that are like, how do we even get them to turn their cameras on anymore? Nobody's even turning their cameras on. And I think that's really the other thing behind the voice, is you need to be able to command the voice through to the people that you can't see.
Oh, yes. Oh,
right?
yes. Because that's
black boxes.
How do we aim our voice even when all the cameras are off? That is a real skill. It takes a lot of practice and confidence, and really building successful messaging, choosing the right words that your listeners can hear, so that even if they are, dealing with the kids in the kitchen or whatever they're dealing with, that they can still hear you and still be in the game with you.
Right.
It takes a lot of energy on your part when cameras are off, because if you fall down in your energy at all, they will tune you out.
Yes. And I speak to black boxes every Monday and Wednesday right now with the college class that I teach, because unless it is a graded discussion where their cameras are required to be on, the only way I can get their cameras on is to grade them while they're speaking. Is it's a complete screen of black boxes, with names and that's it. So I totally feel what you're saying, because you're like, come on, guys, let's, anybody out there, or you keep saying, can you use your reactions and put, give me a thumbs up if you're still here, or if you're listening, or if you're understanding, because you don't have any physical nodding, or you're not seeing any reaction to tell whether they're following along with you or not, or whether they walked away, or whether they're still there. So as executives, the same thing. You probably need to be checking in a little bit more and often with, do you understand, or can you speak back to me what it is that I have asked you to do? Sometimes
that's a great tool.
They don't like to do that. Executives are like, oh, that just feels like I'm suddenly a school marm or something. And I'm like, well, the only way you're going to know is they really comprehended what you want them to do, is to ask them to, let's recap. Let's go around the room. Everybody say, what it is that you're going to do on the project, or what you're responsible for next week.
Right.
It's not, I know, I think people get more nervous to do that than they really should, particularly if it becomes something that they normally do. But you need to hear it back. Otherwise, you're sorely disappointed. Next week's meeting comes around and people are like, Oh,
Yeah.
I was supposed to do that. I thought Joe was doing that, right? You know, they think
Right.
somebody else had that task, and then the manager, you're behind schedule, and now you're irritated and annoyed all day because you didn't do what you asked them to do. So little things like checking it. But I'm looking at the time, and before I ramble anymore, just such a pleasure to have you here today. Those exercises are golden. I can't wait to do some clipping of the of the video, of the replay, and just taking some of these things out and probably posting them in bits and pieces so that more people really get this information. Do you have anything else coming up immediately that you want to tell folks about, or do you have any programs starting or anything?
I'm right now, I'm just in the throes of running a lot of corporate programs. I think there will be some speaking places that I'll be speaking at. I believe I'm being brought in the fall for some tech conferences. And during the conference season, you'll be seeing that. And I'll definitely make sure to put those in LinkedIn so you will see that. But in the meantime, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to learn more about your speaking challenges. And I just appreciate being brought into your show, Allison. This is great that you're doing this.
Yeah, this is great. So you can always reach out to me if you figure you can't find her or whatever, or we're connected obviously on LinkedIn. So you can be a second and find her, you know, through that way. But when you connect with Martha on LinkedIn, just say, hey, saw you live. You don't even have to say, you know, that it was necessarily video. Saw you live, and she'll be more apt to connect, right? All of these just blanket generic connections. Let's get away from doing that. Tell people where you met them or where you saw them, because I'm getting pickier with who I say yes to when it comes to LinkedIn. And if you saw me and I don't know from where, I may not accept your connection because I'm like, who's this? So tell her where you saw her, and you guys can get connected. And you don't have to be corporate. She does work one-on-one with individuals as well. So because I know there's a lot of entrepreneurs in my network or small business owners. And if you are a small business owner, think about what this would do for your office, because everybody's in business development for a small office. Everybody's doing sales, and everybody is customer facing. So improve that voice and improve your business bottom line for sure. All right, everybody, have a fantastic Tuesday. I will go over and end the broadcast. And before you start speaking, take some breaths and practice your lips, teeth, tip of the tongue. Get those articulators going this morning. So enjoy your day, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for checking in. Bye.